patrons of the day.
I think what is remarkable about Leonardo is that more than anybody else at his time, and indeed more than anybody else for decades thereafter, he worked for himself. He did what interested him. And it's not that he didn't need to make a living as an artist. He did. He needed that income. But he, more than he wanted to satisfy his patrons, whoever they were, wanted to satisfy himself, his own intellectual curiosity, his own aesthetic needs. The patrons for him were, shall we say, enablers and inconveniences sometimes at worst.
From patrons, you first get flattery, then hard work, then ingratitude and recriminations.
The most obvious thing patrons wanted from their portraits was to establish their identity. But in the case of the Mona Lisa, Leonardo deliberately avoided even this basic requirement. In his other portraits, Leonardo usually left some clue or symbol so that people could easily identify the sitter. This is the earliest of them. He places the subject in front of a juniper bush because in Italian, juniper or Ginepro is a play on her name, Ginevra da Vinci. And in his exquisite portrait of Cecilia Gallerani, the ermine she's holding is a mascot of her lover, the Duke of Sforza. But in the Mona Lisa, he left no clue in the picture at all, and there is no mention of her in any of his writings. She is simply a mysterious woman sitting in a landscape. Leonardo may not have wanted to reveal her name, but his secret has inspired one of the greatest quests in the history of art, to discover the Mona Lisa's true identity.
One person who would have loved to have had her portrait painted in oil by Leonardo da Vinci is Isabella d'Este, the Marchioness of Mantua. When he visited her in Mantua, he obviously did at least 2 charcoal sketches, brief, rapid, bravura performances there. Left one behind with her and took the other on his travels down to Florence. Now, for the next 2 years, she's in constant negotiation, pleading with him to finish the portrait or send the sketch back or send her something from his hand.
She was so desperately keen, she even pleaded with Cecilia Gallerani to borrow her portrait by Leonardo so that she could work out her own instructions to the painter.
Isabella was a bit of a pain. She would actually send artists links of string telling them how big the figures should be. Now, even for people who are being used to told what to paint, this was, this was going a bit far. I think Leonardo probably found her rather oppressive.
But there's no shortage of other possibilities. The visitors to Leonardo's house in 1517 thought the model was Isabella Gualanda, the exotic mistress of his old patron, Giuliano de' Medici. And there's a further possibility in the august figure of Constanza d'Avalos. From a warmongering dynasty, she was a military commander in her own right. There's an Italian poem of the time which names Constanza as the veiled lady in a portrait by an artist called Vinci. Finally, there's the Florentine housewife, Lisa Gherardini, named by Leonardo's biographer, Vasari. The best way to clear up this confusion is by going to Milan. I wanted to look through documents which relate to the history of the painting and might help identify the most likely sitter. There are problems with all 4 candidates. Medici mistresses tended to flaunt their status with expensive jewels, not for them the restrained taste of the Mona Lisa. And the well-endowed Grand Duchess was well over 40 and a widow when Mona Lisa was painted, so she's unlikely. As for the vain and imperious Isabella d'Este, if she really had persuaded Leonardo to paint her portrait, wouldn't she have made absolutely sure the whole world knew about it? There are also doubts about Lisa Gherardini. Italian scholars find it particularly hard to believe Leonardo would have chosen to paint a middle-class housewife. After centuries of uncertainty, a vitally important piece of evidence has only just come to light in the Milan State Archive. It's a probate document detailing the estate of one Gian Giacomo Caprotti, who was murdered in 1525. And we know Gian Giacomo as Salai, the little devil, Leonardo's lifetime companion.
The original is too delicate to handle, but from this photocopy it's absolutely clear why Leonardo scholars regard it as a crucial piece of the Mona Lisa jigsaw. It's a list of all Salai's possessions, and one entry in particular is absolutely fascinating. It refers to a picture, quadro, dicto la Honda, called La Honda. And it's valued at 505 lira, a small fortune at the time, and a price which could only really be attached to a masterpiece, a Leonardo masterpiece, that he left to Salai. Now the plot thickens because there's a second document. And in this document, the abbreviation La Honda has been scratched out and replaced with the word La Gioconda. Now we know that the married name of one of Leonardo's sitters, Lisa Gherardini, was in fact Lisa del Gioconda.
So, after 500 years, the mystery of the Mona Lisa's identity has finally been resolved. Salai's inventory confirms Lisa del Gioconda, the Florentine housewife, was indeed the Mona Lisa.
This is one of the most amazing discoveries. I mean, you sit in the Milan archives day after day after day. It's a freezing cold place. And you're reading all of this Latin, and then suddenly you've got it. You've got a document which tells you finally something you didn't know before.
So who was Lisa del Gioconda? By tracking down marriage and birth certificates, we've managed to discover some tantalizing details. She lived here in the Via del Stufa with her husband Francesco, a prosperous silk merchant. She was the daughter of a middle-class landowner, got married at 16 and was Francesco's third wife. His two other wives died tragically in childbirth. Lisa herself lost a daughter, but she did have two other children who managed to survive. What she meant to Leonardo, we'll probably never know. But if this was meant to be a portrait of a respectable middle-class housewife, then it's a very odd one indeed, and quite unlike any other picture of its time.
It's here at the Uffizi Galleries in Florence, but you can get a clear idea of how radical the Mona Lisa must have seemed in its day. Just 3 decades earlier, even masters like Piero della Francesca were forced to abide by strict social conventions.
The whole point of these portraits was to show off your status. So they had to, of course, wear their best clothes, their jewels, their finery, so that they could be seen in all their glory. As you can see from this picture, it was very much a man's world. And here you have the man, the owner, really, essentially, of the wife who is the possession. She has to be modest, chaste, virtuous. That's what's expected of her. Loose hair was a sign of eroticism, so it was something which was frowned upon. Consequently, you can see that her hair is trussed up and decorated, certainly not allowed to flow in any way at all. In the very materialistic culture of early 16th century Florence, everything was about keeping up appearances.
By comparison, Leonardo decides to throw away the rule book. Far from being the height of fashion, her dress is utterly plain and timeless. Lisa is a married woman, but she wears no wedding ring. Indeed, there's no jewellery, no adornment of any kind, apart from a simple gold braid on her neckline. We're told nothing about her family's wealth or social position. Her loose hair would even have been seen at the time as implying loose morals, the curls falling sensually over her shoulders. And there's another radical innovation, her pose.
Traditionally, Renaissance paintings would be in profile. It would be like me standing like this, and you'd only see the profile. But what Leonardo does, it